one way of talking about the condition that we're in is that we take ourselves to be our body. And that's just simply not the case, right? But in order to come out of that, that's a very deep habit that got ingrained very early on in life. So to come out of that way of relating to your body takes consistent practice over time. But if you do it consistently over time so that when things go wrong with the body, they're not going wrong with you. Do you get the difference? You know, if you're not your body, it means that, and the destiny of the body is a given, right? The destiny of the body is a given. It's going to get old, sick, and die. And between now and then, it's going to get cold, it's going to have headaches, it's going to, you know, so if that's what you are, you're going to have to suffer, right? But if you develop a practice that allows you to experience being the awareness of the body rather than being the body, when the body gets sick, you're not sick. The body's sick. There's space there, right? There's space there. And this is important, especially as you get older, because as we get older, the shit's going to start to happen with the body. You know, things are going to start to break down. You know, the body is a time body. In time, it's going to break down. It's going to fail, right? Anything that appears will disappear, right? And although that's natural, we're conditioned to resist it. Although it's natural to get sick, old, and die, we're conditioned to resist it, to avoid it, to deny it. Right? This is one of the reasons why in the teachings there's a lot of emphasis placed on looking at this reality of death, looking at this reality of aging, looking at this reality of illness, and coming to understand that this is going to be something that we will suffer through unless we have practiced sufficiently to be able to relax when these things begin to happen. Right? And the practice has to be consistent. You cannot expect to do meditation once in a while, and you cannot expect to practice breathing differently once in a while and think it's going to make any difference. It's not. That's why I say to you, you know, you should be establishing a meditation practice that is at least 30 minutes of formal meditation, and then you should be staying as aware as you can during the day so that you can have resting as awareness for brief moments occur during your day. You should be practicing being conscious of your breathing during the day and practicing this way of breathing that is using less breath, breathing softer, breathing lighter, and breathing deeper. These are all different practices that will facilitate your ability to disidentify yourself with the body and disidentify yourself with the personality and develop an ability to have a calm mind and a relaxed physical body. Right? And if you do this over time, there will be a natural increase in well-being. There'll be a natural increase in experiencing peace. There'll be a natural increase in experiencing contentment and satisfaction. And you'll be smart enough to begin to understand that it's never what's happening that's causing your suffering. This is very important. This is one of the key aspects of the teaching. It's never what's happening that's causing your suffering. What's happening is what's happening ever good, bad, right, or wrong? Not in reality. The only thing we can say about what's happening is what's happening is what's happening. That's it. The rest of it is a mental activity, right? So it's not what's happening, it's what we're thinking about what's happening that's causing the suffering. And when we think about what's happening, the thinking activity is a thinking activity in which it continues to produce the idea that what's happening should be different. And that's the place the suffering occurs. As soon as it should be different, what happens? Your body contracts, you tighten up against it, you resist it, right? You try and control it, you struggle with it, you try and deny it, right? And that's called neurosis. That's a mild mental disorder, right? You're just making yourself crazy by trying to control what cannot be controlled. That's why the bottom line is train your system to calm down and relax so that you can enjoy being alive instead of suffer. And this is something that we should all be practicing, right? Is to be practicing loss, because loss is inevitable. You know, you're going to, as you get older, there are enough older people in this room to know what I'm talking about. As you get older, people around you start dying, right? And you can that's either going to disturb you or you're going to see it as just a natural reality. People get old, they get sick, and they die. That's what's going to happen. It's going to happen to your body too. Right? So what we're doing when we practice meditation and when we're practicing applying the principles of the teachings, right? What we're doing when we're practicing that is we're preparing ourselves to be able to be with the way life is and the way life ends, without it meaning that we have to suffer through all that. So you're practicing being aware of the mental activity instead of identifying with it. And when you're aware of the mental activity and you see that the voice in your head is complaining or is fretting, right, about what's happening, right, or is stimulating the emotion of fear about what's happening, right, that because you're training yourself to be awake and aware, and you're aware of that mental activity, when you see that that's what's going on in the mind, right, you make sure you're not identifying with it. You're not trying to change it, but you're not identifying with it either. It's just mental activity. It's the activity that produces the identification with you as a personality. And the reality is, the truth of the matter is, the personality that most human beings take themselves to be simply does not exist. You know, for most people, that would be a very unusual statement to make. You know, most people take themselves to be a personality like it's a fact, when in reality, there's literally no evidence for the idea that you're a personality. Other than the thought activity, there's no evidence that you exist as a personality, and there's 100% evidence that you exist as awareness. 100% evidence, right? So this is what I'm talking about. You don't just let things be the way they are. When you see what's not working, you seek solutions to that, like I just gave you. If you can't go to sleep, it's because you're not relaxed. That's what's happening. You're not relaxed. It's either you're not relaxed because of a mental activity, right? Or you're not relaxed because of your physical activity. Your body's stimulated, overstimulated, right? So, okay, so if that's the case, that's what you want to address. You want to continue to do everything within your power to develop your ability to come out of your mental state and relax the body. And this is not rocket science. You know, if you're lying in bed and you start paying attention to your physical body and you start focusing on your belly moving with the breath, and you're practicing this method of breathing that we've been talking about, right? Slowing down, breathing more lightly, taking less breaths. And when you exhale, every time you exhale, you experience a release. Right? Every time you exhale, you should be experiencing a letting go, right? Because falling asleep is a letting go, just like practicing meditation, right? Right? So if you're not good at it, practice letting go. Don't just, accept the fact that that's the condition that you're existing in. It's going to have negative effect. It's going to have a negative impact on you. That's why in the practice of meditation, maybe the most important aspect of the practice is being aware of your ability to determine where your attention is. And as I said earlier, if you're practicing this breath work, it requires that you maintain consistent attention on the belly and consistent attention on the breath work, right? So if you're practicing meditation, what are you doing? You're being with the breath. So you can practice meditation and at the very same time be doing breath work. And if you're doing formal meditation for 30 minutes a day, that's 30 minutes of breath practice as well. And if you continue to train yourself to relax through formal meditation, informal meditation, and using the breath work, over time, this will become a natural state of being. Over time, this will become a natural state of being in which you'll experience yourself as a transcendental being. Transcendence, right? That's what they meant when they said you're in the world but not of the world. Your true nature as awareness, right, is not living in time. It's not of the world, right? Your true nature as awareness has no form and has no shape, Right? But most of us are unfamiliar with it because we've been spending our whole life in the habit of paying attention to thinking, paying attention to emotions, paying attention to physical sensations, right? And trying to control all that. That's what we're doing. Everybody's trying to control all that, right? And the evidence suggests the more you try and control it, the worse it gets. Right? Why? Because that's a form of resistance, and what you resist persists. It's a very simple axiom. What you resist persists. So what we're practicing here is not resisting anything. We're practicing being with the way things are, and we're practicing being with the way things are when the way things are relatively easy, not that challenging yet, right? But they will be challenging. That's why we're practicing now, because they will be challenging. You know? And if you're older, it's important to practice as much as possible, right? To try and get ahead of the game. Right? Try and get yourself in a situation where when the shit hits the fan, which it will, this is what you have to understand. The shit is going to hit the fan. It's not a maybe, it's going to hit the fan. And before it hits the fan in terms of the inevitables, right, it's going to hit the fan unexpectedly, right? Things are going to happen between now and when the body gets old and you get sick and you die. Things are going to happen between now and then, like accidents, right? You know, losses, unexpected losses, looking at the news, right? I mean, if looking at the news 10 years ago was a lot easier, wasn't it? Yes. Yeah, you look at the news now and it's like, Jesus Christ, what else is going to happen, right? But we're practicing being able to be with that instead of having the fact that that's occurring determine the quality of our life. I was listening to somebody talk about this the other day, and there's a lot of people these days talking about how to manage not being affected by the circumstances that are occurring in the world. Right? And the reality of that is relatively simple, right? Since most of us can't control that stuff, right? And most of us can't control that stuff. Most of us, there's not much we can do to change that stuff, right? So what do? Do you allow that to determine the fact that you're suffering? Do you allow that to cause you to suffer? No. You know, some people ask the Dalai Lama, why are you always laughing and smiling? You know the world's crazy and the world's suffering. Why are you laughing and smiling? And he said, because that's what I want to represent. I want to represent the possibility that who we are can smile and laugh and enjoy being alive regardless of the circumstances. That's what he chooses to project to people, right? It's not that he doesn't cry, he cries. It's not that he doesn't feel sorrow for the condition of human beings in the world, he does. But when he's in public, that's not what he wants to express. He wants to project the possibility that you can be happy anyway. You can be happy anyway. And anger is something that you can get around by practicing not having enemies, you know? You don't have to have enemies. It's up to you whether you have enemies or not. You don't have to get angry. It's up to you whether you get angry or not. And it may take some practice, right? In the beginning, if you're succeeding in doing these practices, in the beginning, the first thing you'll notice is that anger still happens, but you don't act it out. That's the first thing. Once that happens, and you continue to be that way with your emotions, right? Anger will start to decline until you start to notice that it just doesn't come up anymore. It just stops coming up. It stops coming up because you don't identify with it. It stops coming up because you don't feed it. You know, if you have an angry thought and you see it as a thought instead of the truth, right? And you see it as a negative, unnecessary experience, right? Then you can practice as the awareness not to identify with it. And if you don't identify with it, then you're not angry. Anger is there. You're aware of it, but you're not angry. You get the distinction? That's what you want to start to practice, being the awareness of emotions instead of being the emotions. You know, being the awareness of anger instead of being angry. Being the awareness of being confused instead of being confused. Identify the mental state as a conditioned operation that's happening by itself. You're not the cause of it. And if you identify with it, you're at the effect of it. If you identify with it, it means that your mental state is determining the quality of your life. That's why our Zen teacher says, if you want to be happy, train your mind. Train your mind to be a beautiful mind. How do you do that? You don't express its condition when its condition is negative. You don't express it. You don't try and change it, but you don't express it, right? And when you're aware of it and you don't express it, it loses its value because it's not being used, right? It's like a neural pattern, you know. An unused neural pattern will die out and get replaced by a new neural pattern, and that's what we're up to, is changing the brain. When you change your mind, the brain will change. And if the brain changes over time, you can eventually get into a place where you're just naturally more relaxed, naturally more calm, naturally more able to be responsible. Naturally more able to be responsible. The word responsible is able to respond, isn't it? Response able, all right? To be responsible means that you begin to practice looking at your relationship to the circumstances in your life. This is one of the things one of the teachers that I studied used to say. He used to redefine the definition of responsibility. And he said responsibility is a willingness to look at the situations you find yourself in from cause. See yourself as cause in the matter. See yourself as cause in the matter. If you see yourself as cause in the matter, you have the ability to determine your experience, don't you? If you see yourself as an at effect, right? The cause is not me, I'm at the effect of the cause, and you don't have any control over that. And when you understand the truth, you understand that you are the source. You know, the consciousness or awareness that is your true nature is the source of what's happening. It is godlike. You are the source of what's happening, right? When you can take responsibility for being the source of what's happening, meaning that you're taking responsibility for being consciousness. You're taking responsibility for being the awareness, and you understand what the teachings say, that all there is awareness, right? All there is awareness. There is no separate self. There is no personality. This is the truth. That's why in the teachings at the end of the Heart Sutra, at the end of the Heart Sutra, they take the time to make the statement, this is the truth. Why are they saying that? They're saying that because they want you to understand this isn't a theory. This isn't some belief system. No, this is the truth. What is the truth? The truth is the way it really is. It's the way it really is. And if you're not living consistent with the way it really is, you must suffer. It's an axiomatic reality. You must suffer if you're not living consistent with the way it is. So if you let life be the way life is, life will let you be okay. It's as simple as that. But in order for that to be the case, you have to break up this automatic, habitual way that you find yourself identifying with the mental activity. Don't kid yourself. Don't kid yourself. When you leave this room, if you really pay attention, you can notice that you've fallen back into the default state again. You can notice that you are again identifying yourself with the thoughts that are occurring in your mind. And that's what you're trying to break the habit of, right? You can't break the habit of doing that unless you recognize it when it's happening. That's obvious, right? So you have to practice paying attention. You have to practice paying attention to how you feel. You have to practice paying attention to what the thoughts are in your mind, right? So you can stop allowing that to cause you to suffer. You can be aware of it and not suffer, right? Instead of identifying with it and then believe that the thoughts are the truth. You're having these negative thoughts about other people and about yourself and about reality, and you call that the truth. And if that's the truth, it means that there's no way out. If that's the truth, there's no way out, right? The good news, it's not the truth at all. It's a misinterpretation of reality. And you can see it as a misinterpretation of reality if you're looking at it as awareness, if your identity is awareness. But that's going to take some practice, right?